Bow, 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 bow. Hey, everybody. Did you like how I just did my own theme song just there? I hope you did. Jay here with a quick interruption. I don't have ads, so I'm going to advertise myself in the middle of this podcast. Why not? This is somewhere north of 300 episodes when you're listening to this. And golly gee, it has been a journey, and I appreciate you coming with me on that journey for this whole time that you've been here. Maybe you've been here from the beginning. Maybe you've been here since like an episode ago. I'm just glad you're here. But I do have to say this. We here at Blockbusting, and there's literally a we. Chorkin, come around. Come around to the other side of the camera so we can see. Look, guys, I got a staff now, all right? I got interns, okay? I got producers. I got stuff to handle here at the space that I record at and elsewhere. And I want to be able to pay these people. And I, unfortunately, do not make the kind of money to pay these people myself. And that's where I hope that you can come in. By supporting the Blockbusting Patreon. Yes, that's right. We've got a Patreon. I haven't plugged it in a bit, but I'm going to start plugging it heavy now, because why not? I want to pay these folks, all right? And you can support the podcast for just as low as $1 a month, all right? $1 a month goes back into the show. I'm not even paying myself. I don't care about paying myself for this podcast. I care about giving a little something back to the people who help me out, because I'm getting a lot of help from people these days. And they deserve a little something for their efforts beyond just my eternal thanks and gratitude, which they're going to get anyway. So you can subscribe for $1 a month. You start getting access to bonus content from me, like I'm posting episodes of my game show Wrong that I'm doing here in Los Angeles that I'm not posting to the public. I'll start posting bonus episodes of me talking about stuff again. What's Good with Jay Light, where I just talk about what I liked that I saw on the television and the internet and stuff these days, because that's how you do for Patreon. We still have the JFlix level, the $5 tier, where you can get access to my full film, television, comedy special library. That's just $5 a month. It's cheaper than pretty much every streaming service out there, except for, I guess, Apple TV is $5 a month. And they have Severance and Ted Lasso, so you really can't go wrong there. And they got Coda. I mean, Coda, what a delight. But you know what I've got? Xanadu. And nobody else has that. Pfft, duh. I've got A Day Without a Mexican, Los Digits' least favorite movie. You listen to that episode, it's a great episode. But you just got to watch the movie, which I have on JFlix for $5 a month. I got a bunch of weird stuff. So go consider, please, subscribing to the Patreon for Blockbusting. The link is in the show notes. Or you can just go type into your little web browser right now, tippity tap it into patreon.com/blockbusting. Again, that is patreon.com/blockbusting. And your support will go to helping me throw a little cash the way of the fine folks who help make this podcast happen. That's all I'm asking, is you throw me a little something so I can throw them a little something, okay? We're going direct, because, you know, this is like thoughts and prayers with guns. Like, saying thanks is only going to do so much. I want to give them cash, okay? At least buy them a coffee or something. So patreon.com/blockbusting. You can join and support for as little as $1 a month. And that's all there is, folks. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
Let me tell you something. Bustin' makes me feel good.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Blockbusting, the podcast where we love to hate movies. I'm your host, Jay Light. Joining me today, the host and proprietor of Comic Book Cinema on YouTube, it's Jonathan May.
How's it going?
Dude, it's good. I'm so happy to have you on the show. Y'all, if you're fans of the podcast, you should definitely go check out John's YouTube channel, Comic Book Cinema. I know that if fans of the show will know I'm a little bit cantankerous when it comes to comic book movies. They're not my favorite genre, but I appreciate more and more the way that people talk about them, and I think you do a great job talking about them. Where's the best place? On YouTube, obviously, and then of course you got your other platforms.
Yeah, on YouTube, you can find us at Comic Book Cinema, and then Instagram and TikTok at Real Comic Book Cinema. But it's a little bit of everything there for, each social media platform kind of offers a different type of comic book movie commentary. So, yeah, check it out. It's fun.
And I think it's interesting that you pick. You talk about comic book cinema as in terms of like the grand scheme of things. We're in an age now where filmmaking has really evolved in terms of what things are getting adapted from. We're getting a lot more, not just stuff from comic books, but graphic novels. And the film you chose to talk about today, it's listed on Wikipedia as a superhero film based on a graphic novel by Greg Rucka. I'm not 100% sure if I would call it a superhero film based on watching it now, but it's The Old Guard.
Yeah, I didn't know that, and that's really hilarious because I was so excited about the opportunity to discuss a movie that wasn't a comic book movie, but as a technicality, it actually turns out it is a comic book movie. So go figure.
Sliding right in on the technicalities. I mean, that's the thing. It's like I wouldn't necessarily consider Sin City a comic book movie, but it technically is, right?
Yeah, it's a graphic novel. Yeah, that certainly is. And same with 300, I guess. A lot of things that when you really think about it are comic book films. But yeah, this movie, let's just talk about it for a second. It really didn't work for me in so many different ways. I think a lot of that comes from my biasness towards Charlize Theron.
Okay.
For whatever reason, she just gives me the impression that she's similar to Tom Cruise in a way that this is a human being that seems so far removed from reality in so many different ways. And I just get that vibe. I get that impression. I might be completely off base. If I were to meet her in real life, maybe she would be the coolest person ever. But that's I don't want to say hatred because I don't hate anyone, but my disdain for Charlize Theron just really probably creates a lot of my dislike for this film. That's where everything begins. And also on top of that, not only Charlize, but literally everyone in this cast does not give me the impression whatsoever that they could be remotely a badass in any type of way.
See, that's interesting because I feel like I agree with you on most of that. I do think a lot of the characters in this movie, the actors portraying them rather, don't really strike me as people who are going to be badass, immortal warriors throughout time, right? I feel like Charlize Theron is the one who makes the most sense, but that's just because I've seen her play those kinds of roles well in the past with movies like Atomic Blonde and Mad Max Fury Road. I feel like, however, if you put Charlize Theron in a weird Karen haircut, you're definitely not going to do any favors for making us like her as the heroic lead in this movie.
To be fair, I'm a very weird person, and seriously, no. Even my wife was talking to me the other day. She's like, "Why do you hate Charlize Theron?" And I was like, "First of all, I don't hate her." She's like, "Yeah, the way." I don't know, certain people, I've always been this way. Certain people, I don't even have to meet the person. I can just look at them and just get the vibe. I don't like that person, so maybe, like I said, that's probably a big part of it. And maybe I have issues that I need to go to a psychiatrist about, but for whatever reason, I'm just not a big fan of Charlize Theron. So that's, like I said, that's where a lot of it stems from.
So if you're not a fan of Charlize Theron, though, she's all over the marketing for this movie. Why did you watch this movie in the first place? What was your experience like watching it for the first time?
My experience watching this for the first time was with my wife, because this is another thing too that probably plays into it. I don't like probably 99% of all the Netflix films. I think that it's just literal and utter garbage.
Yes.
That gets put out there. And the only reason Netflix is successful is because, can we pause the video just for 1 second?
Sure.
My computer's about to go dead and I forgot to put on the charger.
No worries.
Okay, and then I'll carry on or resume that. My disdain for Netflix. Okay. So, as far as Netflix is concerned, the reason that I hate Netflix so much is just because they literally get to put out garbage. They don't suffer the same repercussions that these other movie studios suffer.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, if Sony puts out a film that is garbage, they're going to feel the consequences in their pocketbook.
Yep.
The same with Disney or any other movie studio out there. With Netflix, they can put out dog crap and have no consequences because as long as their subscriber count doesn't change, that's all they care about at the end of the day. So they almost have like this license to print. You hear the term license to print money. They have this license to put out garbage and hot dog shit for movies. Even the Extraction movie with Chris Hemsworth, I didn't like it. When I think of any Adam Sandler movie that's came out on Netflix, garbage. There's so many dumpster fires that they just get away with. Even the Burn Notice movie, is that what it's called? Red Notice, Burn Notice?
Red Notice, yeah.
With three amazing Hollywood stars, and it was just such a mediocre film. So
it's a real shame that Netflix, despite having access to some of the best stable of talent in Hollywood and seemingly endless amounts of money, they're still putting out pretty much only movies that I would barely even consider buying at the Love's Truck Stop bargain bin.
Yep.
It's not working. It's not working, Netflix, and I don't understand your strategy. You're buying all these cool, like this movie could have been cool. I watched it. It got really good reviews from the critics. It somehow managed to get an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. Or 81%, excuse me. And it was nominated for a bunch of things at the People's Choice Awards, Critics' Choice Awards. You even have a chance to have a director like Gina Prince Bythewood, who had not directed an action superhero movie, anything in this vein before. I like the idea of giving these kinds of movies chances, but then, unfortunately, you throw us a gray, bland, uninteresting mess. And you're really doing a disservice to the people who I think could watch this movie and really latch onto it and care about it.
Absolutely. There's so much exposition dumps in this film.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's a big way that it suffers, honestly, is just the amount of slow exposition parts of the film. And, the action set pieces are cool enough. They aren't awful by any means. There's some cool bits. I think the one thing that sticks out is when the guy is throwing the shotgun back and forth from him to the other guy. And there's a lot of cool things in the film, but apparently it's also, I've never seen Highlander, but apparently it's also a giant ripoff of the Highlander plot. I didn't know that before, but that whole concept of the immortal and there can only be one. So it just doesn't do it for me, man. I think that, and I might be wrong, you might have to fact check this one for me, but as far as the girl that was in the Marines,
Kiki Lane, yeah.
Isn't she going to be playing Ironheart in the new Black Panther movie, or am I wrong about that?
It doesn't look like it. It looks like I think,
or maybe that's Dominique.
I think Letitia Wright is supposed to be playing Ironheart. But let me see.
Maybe it's Dominique Thorne as well, or
maybe. I mean, I'm looking it up because I was literally, so I have a buddy of mine who's a huge Marvel fan, and he was talking about how it seems like they were setting Shuri up to play, to play.
Well, I may have worded that wrong. I was saying she's playing Ironheart, which is, she's not going to be playing the new Black Panther. She's going to be playing Ironheart, but I thought that was the same actress, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe her name is,
because I think they set it up to where she's not going to play the new Black Panther, but it seems like there's going to be, let's see here. Are they going to even say who's going to play it? Oh, no, you're right. It's Ironheart's different. Yeah. Different character completely. Because I don't think that Shuri's going to wind up playing the new T'Challa.
Yeah. That
Dominique Thorne. That's right.
Is it? So is that the same actress that was in this film or no?
No. Kiki Lane is in this film. Kiki Lane she was just in something. She was in Chippendale Rescue Rangers, which is a great movie. Way better than this movie. In terms of, if we're doing a fun action movie, Chippendale Rescue Rangers, way better than The Old Guard. Watch that instead. Just say that right out the gate. I usually save recommendations for the very end, but Chippendale Rescue Rangers, a million times better than The Old Guard. Not even close.
Yeah, there's something about this film that it just suffers from being boring and bland and like unmemorable. It's
Hmm.
just there's so many problems with it. I think that and when I think of an action film, and maybe this is because of the era that I grew up in, but when I think of an action film, I want actors that are like Sylvester Stallone, pulsating with steroids in their veins, like guys like Dolph Lundgren, guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I wanted I guess maybe that's what it was too. Like they were characters like even I feel like I'm stumbling over myself here, but even the
You're fine.
characters.
You want to see some. You want to see some beefy action stars. You don't want to see skinny action stars.
Yeah, I mean, like that's what I want to see. I want to see like pulsating veins, Uh,
You want to see people who look like they've taken HGH for a long time of their lives.
yeah, and Hemsworth comes to mind, like in the modern era. But it seems like we've gotten away from that type of action film in the modern era. You don't have that anymore. You have actors that look like me, people that are just small guys that look like a normal dude, going around kicking butt. And sometimes it does work with that Mr. Nobody film. That was a good movie, I thought.
Yes. I mean, that's the thing. The big difference there, too, is that in Nobody, for instance, compared to the old guard, you got somebody who is, from a directing standpoint, they know what they're doing as an action filmmaker. And I think that, I wouldn't say that a ton of the problems with this movie come down to the direction. I think Gina Prince Bythewood did a good job as far as somebody who's never done an action film before, right? For a first-time action filmmaker, she got the job done. But when you have the opportunity, this falls back on Netflix. Sure, I get the idea of wanting to break out your talent a little bit, change things up, give them an opportunity to direct something that they might find themselves being really good at. But when you have the opportunity to make an action film and make it something that's like, oh, we're going to make this the prime, we're changing up the franchise, we're changing the way we do things. Get a good action filmmaker, all right? You got Nobody, you at least have people who are behind it who have made good action films before, with Ilya Naishuler's the director. You got David Leitch producing it. As opposed to now I haven't seen The Gray Man yet, but at least you got the Russo brothers directing and writing that, and they know how to do action filmmaking because they've made their bones as modern film directors in the Marvel Cinematic Universe doing modern action filmmaking.
But don't forget though, the MCU, Kevin Feige and Disney took a big risk bringing them on for the first time on the initially before the Avengers films. It was the
That's right.
the Winter Soldier, Captain America, the Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, they were only known for Arrested Development,
Yeah.
and for whatever reason, and that's the thing that Marvel does so well, and Disney, they think outside the box when it comes to director selection. And a lot of times they find those diamonds in the rough, Maybe Netflix just doesn't have an eye for directors like, Kevin Feige and Disney.
Well, it's interesting too, because I feel like the Russo brothers at least they had Arrested Development, they had a lot of comedy stuff, but they showed that they knew how to handle action with those community episodes they directed, the infamous paintball episodes.
Yeah.
I feel like Gina Prince Bythewood is obviously an acclaimed director. She's done some great work with films like Love and Basketball, Secret Life of Bees. Beyond the Lights is regarded as a very well-made film, and unfortunately, Gina Prince Bythewood, if you're going to take a chance on a first-time action director, do it with somebody who you at least might expect, they can do some cool action sequences. Unfortunately, action filmmaking it felt like it was just cut and paste from okay, other movies did stuff that was gray that happened in the military, and there's pharmaceutical executives being evil. It just felt like it was sort of a Mad Libs of bad guy, good guy traits all thrown into a blender, popped out and turned into this gross smoothie that Charlize Theron and Chiwetel Ejiofor are supposed to be the cherries on top of star power, but it just didn't work. It didn't feel good going down.
Yep. And I will say this, I like the film better the second watch through. And I was also dreading having to rewatch this film over the weekend. But you know what? The second watch through, I enjoyed it a lot more than I did the first time. I can remember the first time just being like, oh God, looking at my watch, talking to my wife, like, when is this film gonna end? But I guess I don't know, maybe like I said, the second watch through wasn't as painful.
That's good, but that's the thing. I feel like you'd already been hurt enough by it that first time that you're sitting through it again. It's like if you go in for like getting your blood drawn the first time, it's not going to feel good. But then, all right, you're helping the greater good out, and that's kind of what you did for this podcast. It's like, all right, I'm gonna sacrifice myself again to watch this movie. I know it's bad. What do you feel like are the most egregious parts of this film? In terms of like, you can't redeem it. There's no way of fixing some of the problems in these scenes. I feel like there's some stuff in this movie that is totally fixable, but I think there's also a lot of stuff that just didn't quite, you can't fix it.
The actors, straight up, like literally, okay, I get it. Charlize Theron, you could even leave her in the film as the lead. Okay. Because like I said, that's just a personal thing. For whatever reason, I don't like Charlize Theron.
You got to get your Charlize Theron issues figured out. You're holding yourself back from a whole world of beautiful Charlize Theron movies.
Oh, I've seen a lot of her films, like Mad Max, great movie. Cinematic masterpiece. Okay, but let's just get past Charlize Theron for a second. Okay, let's take out some of the guys that are scrawnier.
Okay.
And instead put in like a Sylvester Stallone type, maybe a Dolph Lundgren type. Have two of those guys thrown in the mix. And then on top of that, let's take out the girl that was in the Marines and put in someone like a Michelle Rodriguez, or
I feel like you just wanted to see the Expendables instead of this movie with this cast that you're throwing out.
Yeah, it probably so. Because I love that movie and I love Sylvester Stallone. So maybe that speaks a lot to my action movie preferences. But yeah, I just felt like the cast wasn't very believable in that role. That was a big issue. Another big issue for me, something that could have been fixed, like you said earlier, was the plot. Like the ending where we have, this guy has been with these people for centuries. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, because he wants to find a way to kill himself, he betrays the people that he loves and knows the most. And not only that, it goes beyond anything that, you or I could ever have in this world with anyone else, because they've known each centuries, like so many years.
Yeah.
And he just betrays them for that reason. Dude, you can get creative. You can find a way to kill yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I feel like, I get from a storytelling standpoint, I think that's not a bad storytelling choice, but I don't buy with the actor's performance that this is something that's really been eating at him, and this is something that affects him so deeply that he's going to make that choice. It feels like so much of this movie is just these actors collecting a paycheck. Because I'm sure, the budget's $70 million. I'm guessing that a lot of that probably went to Charlize Theron, Chiwetel Ejiofor. Matthias Schoenaerts even probably might have gotten a fair amount of money for playing the role of Booker. He's well regarded, even if he's not as well known in the U.S. But he and these other characters, it just doesn't feel like. We talked about how really like exposition dumpy this movie was. It feels like they couldn't have even been, if they had a chance to do stuff that wasn't just a big exposition dump, they wouldn't have been able to give it any love either. Because exposition dumping on your characters is hard enough as it is, because you can't really do a whole lot with it emotionally as an actor. But even if they had stuff to do, to some really like interesting scenes, it just felt like they were kind of sleepwalking through them. They were just showing up sleepy. You've been alive for decades, centuries even. Sure, you're going to be a little bit tired, but like, give your characters some verve, give them some life.
Yep. I think that the film would have been better served with, rather than the exposition dump, just give us some flashbacks. You gave us a little bit of that with the Charlize battling in the centuries and centuries ago. Mm-hmm. Give us more of that. instead of, explaining everything by having everyone sit at a table and having Charlize Theron eat this chocolate hazelnut bullshit,
Yeah.
just give
Why
it
are
to
we
us.
having her do a baklava taste test? Come on.
Give it to us in an action style format. That's all you got to do.
I also feel like one of the things that really took me out of the action sequences was the music choices. There was so much weird, like sort of pop music that was scoring this action throughout the entire movie. And I was just like, what is going on? Who's the music supervisor on this? Why did they choose these weird sort of like club remixes? These sort of edgy songs that just didn't feel tonally in line with what was going on. And also, why are you having that happen during gunfights? It just doesn't make sense. Like, even, on his worst day and the worst version of the film, David Ayer in Suicide Squad would not have made the choice to use these weird choices for songs to underscore these action sequences. He's at least making things that are going to sound bombastic and sound like they fit with the action sequences.
I didn't notice that the second watch through. It was probably mainly because I had to get very, very drunk to rewatch this film. I felt like in some ways it was like going back to an ex or something. Like it was,
oh my God,
it was really like hard to get through, like everything about it was difficult. So maybe that might've had something to do with it, that I didn't notice the music at all.
That's probably for the best, because the music, trash. The music really, really does not help this movie out at all. Like, I feel like if they changed the music in this movie and got rid of all of the weird soundtracky choices and just put in a score, this movie would have gone up a full star rating for me.
Okay. It must have been bad. Like I said.
It was bad. Jonathan, it was bad.
Was it as bad as playing I'm Just a Girl by No Doubt during a big fight sequence in Captain Marvel?
I mean, at least that made sense in line with what Captain Marvel was doing, right? Like, we're doing a movie that's sort of doing throwback 90s stuff. Yeah, okay, throw in a No Doubt song. At least it is in line with what the movie itself is trying to do. And this is just, like, confusing. Like, sure, make a choice that feels out of place, but sort of in place with what's going on in the world of Captain Marvel. In the old guard, it feels like there's no identity. I feel like that's really at the heart of it. That's the big problem that I have, is this movie doesn't really have an identity other than just action movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
General or basic action movie.
Yeah.
Bland action movie.
This movie is like an IKEA furniture of action movies, right? Like, you followed the directions, you didn't get somebody from TaskRabbit to help you out, and now you're stuck with this mess.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. It's everything about it. Like I said, I probably said this earlier, but everything about it's bland and it's very unmemorable. And yeah, it was tough to get through. The first time it was really tough to get through. The second time, like I said, for whatever reason, it was a little bit easier to watch, but yeah, I would not recommend this film to anyone.
By the way, big props to you for powering through and getting drunk enough to finish this movie the second time. I appreciate that.
I had to.
Now, here's the question. There's a sequel that's happening. They are going to be making a sequel. They're working on it. Do you feel like, now that Netflix has been sort of in the news lately as not doing so hot, and with all the money and resources that they're putting behind trying to turn The Gray Man into a franchise, do you feel like the sequel to this movie is going to wind up getting made, or do you feel like it's going to wind up falling by the wayside?
That's a really good question, because I think we've all known that Netflix has been in the hole for a minute. I mean, like, just up to their eyeballs in debt, because they are furiously spending so much money trying to catch up with the vast libraries that Disney brings to the table, that Peacock, all these other streaming services. And I got a news flash for you. They are not going to catch up to that level. I don't see this ending any other way for Netflix other than them going bankrupt in 5 years or less, and having to sell their library for pennies on the dollar to some other studio that wants to pick it up, because they're not going to catch up. They're just not. They had a model that worked so well when there was no competition, but now that there is not just a little bit of competition, a whole hell of a lot of competition.
Yeah.
and they're spending so much money on these films, with the movie with The Rock and uh Gal Gadot and Ryan Reynolds. How
Red
much money?
Notice, yeah.
What wasn't that? I might correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that $200 million budget?
It might have been. Let's look up what the Red
They're
Notice
spending
budget was.
astronomical amounts of money, and
Yeah, $200 million.
yeah. What was the original question though? As far as
Well,
do I think a sequel is going to come out?
I actually feel like this is probably more interesting to talk about now. Is that you just brought up something that I hadn't even thought about, which is Netflix kind of became the monster that it was trying to kill all along. Like Netflix has created itself into a system, a studio, an idea, a streaming service that's just like it's the snake eating its own tail. Netflix has created itself into a monster, and it's going to collapse under the weight of its own success.
Absolutely, and it's not sustainable. Any expert will tell you, and all the stockholders at Netflix were raising their eyebrows this recent quarter, third quarter, second quarter meeting, whatever quarter it was, because for the first time since ever, there was a big drop in subscribers as opposed to having, a continual increase. And a lot of stockholders really, like I said, are getting nervous about that. I think that the cracks are starting to show at Netflix. And like I said, they've felt like for so long they could put out crap and give us movies that weren't that great with no consequences because they thought those subscribers weren't going anywhere. But those subscribers are starting to go to other places now. The availability's there. You have so many different options when it comes to subscriptions. But I don't think it's sustainable. And whether or not we get a sequel to Old Dogs, which at this point I would say it's possible. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see how the girl made it out of the water coffin, and what her mental state is going to be at this point after being in that coffin for so long. That's one thing that really stuck out to me. Like, damn, that's awful to imagine. Like, imagine being an immortal, someone who can't die, but literally drowning over and over and over, like your sanity at that point. What would it be like? So, if anything, I'm more excited about the sequel just because of that concept and to see where they go with that.
And I will say this, to their credit, if we can be kind, rewind for a second here, we do got to give them credit for making that change from the original graphic novel. Originally, that character just fell off a boat, and that's it. And now they gave her some actual stakes, some good reasoning for the sequel that's inevitably going to wind up happening, whether Netflix makes it or some other property winds up buying it. They changed that character to make that so much more compelling and give us a little bit of the depth that this movie unfortunately lacked.
Yeah. So, if anything, there's a little bit of hope. There's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel there for the sequel, for me at least. I'll watch. I don't know why I like to torture myself like I do, but I'll watch it. Sure.
Sure. Well, you got to go get some therapy and make sure you like Charlize Theron before you watch the next one, because she will be in the lead again. Jonathan, dude, this has been a fun episode. What do you think, by the way, before we get out of here, what should people watch instead of The Old Guard? If they're looking for some fun action that actually has some stakes to it and isn't just gray and boring like this.
Absolutely 100. Now, look, this is not Citizen Kane. So don't go into it expecting that. But if you want some brutal, hardcore action, like I said, steroid pulsating veins, go check out the Expendable films. It's not the last one, but the first two are just a really good time. If you're a fan of that 80s type action, go check those out. Rocky movies, Rambo movies, anything like that, that's my jam.
Good stuff. I have never seen any of those, so I think maybe I'll have to watch them now and let you know what I think about. I'll report back.
Let me know.
Well, thanks again, Jonathan. Where again can the listeners find you in comic book cinema wherever they want to check out your stuff?
Yeah, you can search for us on YouTube by just searching for Comic Book Cinema. Instagram, TikTok, it's at Real Comic Book Cinema.
Cool. You can find me at Diet J on all the social media platforms. Follow the podcast on all social media platforms at Blockbusting Pod. If you like the show, please consider subscribing on Patreon, helping support the show. And that's about it. Jonathan, thanks again.
No problem, man. I had a good time.
Happy to have you. This has been Blockbusting. Go see something good for a change.